Black people come in many shades. This next comedian comes in one of them. I've had the pleasure of working with her around New York City. She's been making a hell of a name for herself. Give her all your love, man. I love her to death. From Manhattan, Maija, ladies and gentlemen.
Years ago, watching, like Chappelle was in the, we were down at the Boston Comedy Club, and he was just out there, and in the middle of it, just stopped me like, if I just had a mic for every place I went, my life would be 100 times better. Oh my gosh. You know what? I finally got a weekend off, and I've been traveling so much, and I'm in LA. So I consider being in Los Angeles, in my home, kind of a treat until I have to drive. And I'm just convinced that everyone is high in Los Angeles, but it depends on what drug they're on. I think they should separate the lanes according to which drug. So if they're just smoking weed, they can be in the slow lane, and then you can have the coke addicts in the fast lane, but they don't really do that, so they interchange. Needless to say, I tried not to leave my apartment. That was pretty much it. I just I wasn't gonna go out too far because it just got crazy. But I enjoyed myself. I did go out. I did Uber to the Pantages to see the last run of Some Like It Hot, which was one of my favorite films of all time, as a Broadway show. But then leaving in the Uber, I almost got shot, and then the police closed off 3 blocks, and helicopters started flying, and I'm like, oh, that's just LA on regular Saturday night. So. Oh God, you know, I didn't want to do stand up. It wasn't anything particular. People always told me I should do comedy, and I remember literally standing on 23rd and 3rd Avenue, monologuing about how I would never do comedy, and then it's turned into my entire life. I wanted to do characters, I wanted to do theater, and someone told me to try it out in a stand-up club, and I tried it out, and I killed the first night. And then the second night, I was terrible. I couldn't figure it out. And the third night, I was worse. And then I couldn't figure it out. And then the fourth night, I was a little bit better, but couldn't figure it out. And then next thing you know, I was obsessed with just trying to fix what was wrong. And then next thing you know, like all these years go by, and it's a weird addiction. I tell family members, people I love, I'm like, don't try it, because once you try it, the worst thing that can happen is you're funny. And then you get the laugh, and then you can't. I liked like John Leguizamo. I loved Whoopi Goldberg. Being a New Yorker, I grew up in the city where you could have one-man shows. So I always liked the idea of one-person show concepts where I could. And every time I went to acting school, I couldn't do the scene serious. So my teacher just got fed up and said, "All right, do this as your stepmother, or do this as, you know, your grandmother, and I could instantly understand the scene if I had someone else." And so, and also too, my life has been, everybody telling me who I am has been a big issue. People fight over my identity. Like people who are complete strangers will stop me and ask me what I am, and then I'll tell them, and then they'll tell me that I'm not who I am, which is very awkward. Because if you don't know you can't spell my first name, you might not know my first name, you definitely don't know my last name, and you are telling me who I am, and you're defiant about it. And it's jarring, because it's like, am I missing something? You know, I was out with a friend the other day, someone I've known for years, who said, you know, you are, well, you say you're mixed, but I don't understand, because you look so light, how can you say you're black? And I said, you know, and I didn't even know how to answer that. But it's like, I'm half Italian. If somebody came up and said, you look Irish, Maija, you shouldn't tell people you're Italian.
What?
They just seem to have the problem with the black thing, you know, but it's a lot of work to lie. And so I find myself getting mentally jarred who react to me all the time on just the simplest issue of, you know, where are you from? that I end up monologuing, and I monologue very sarcastic. I must have written like 600 pages of material. When I first moved to LA, I stopped doing stand-up. I had one annoying friend
Okay.
who would stump me all the time. But it was like a 2-mile walk back from her house. And I like to walk because I'm a New Yorker. So I would walk back, and the whole time the monologue would just go. Everything that made me want to put them in check. But I was too polite. So, so I wouldn't say it to their face, but I'll say it on a mic. Yeah, I remember years ago watching, like Chappelle was in we were down at the Boston Comedy Club, and he was just sat there, and in the middle of it just stopped me like, if I just had a mic for every place I went, my life would be 100 times better. And I agree. It's like, but just trying to worry about other people's feelings, and how do you not, I'm a person, I like people. I don't ever say really what I feel unless I'm on that microphone. It is really the best feeling when you can just be honest and the room laughs, so they co-sign it, Yeah, I took a break because I was it's funny because I was never popular. No one took me to my proms. I have a joke. My brother, who's gay, took me to one of my proms, which is true. I literally never dated, never got it. I was always good at performing because my mother had me working as a actress, a singer, and all this other drummer, everything. But when I got into comedy, I was really good at being funny because I'm awkward, but I had a hard time getting in. I had to really prove myself. But I remember the day before I taped my Def Jam, I went and I got my hair cut different, and I had done my Apollo, and my Apollo, I tried to boo me off. I had a great show, but my hair looked crazy, my outfit looked crazy, and I was like screaming at the mic. So I said, okay, I'm going to go to my sister's house. I'm going to take a Ralph Lauren suit out. I put that on. I go to do my Def Comedy Jam, and I had this new hair. And I went from nobody liking me to everybody liking me. And all these guys but I knew they didn't like me like the week before. So I didn't want to sleep with any of these guys because I knew they didn't like me before, but they took it as rejection. Most of the female comics at the time I started, who were some of the most brilliant female comics, brilliant comics, they don't even get female in front of it, had to sleep with or do sexual favors for the club bookers to let them work. I didn't know this was going on. So I would just go in because I got the stage time from coming off of a lot of heat from like Def Jam. And I wasn't scared to punk somebody. If you did something to me that was really rude, I'd get on stage and I would just put you in your place in front of the crowd. And that made for a lot of trouble. And also, so I ended up having spats with some of the guys that I wouldn't sleep with. I had one comic attacked me in my apartment. And this other guy who was like kind of an open micer, but he was a sweetheart. He came up there, found the guy had attacked me, went to the club, went to beat him up. Then that guy spread a rumor that the guy who beat him up was because I slept with him, and it became this whole thing. A sexual harassment lawsuit with the #1 radio station in the country, Hot 97 at the time, which was the flagship to hip hop. So between all those incidents, and the fact that I had the nerve to stand up and try to sue the radio station at the time, I got dumped from most of the clubs in New York City. They stopped because they said I was causing problems. And it was mostly I was standing up for myself. And as I'm older and I look back to, because for years getting beat up out of the clubs that way, I actually ended up looking within myself and almost scared to come back because for a long time I couldn't figure out why I was making trouble. Man, there are so many great female comedians that are not getting the play. I hate to even talk about it, but there is, especially since the comedian who was the thief had passed, which was tragic. Everybody was a fan of Robin Williams, but his career was launched on the back of a woman named Nancy Parker. And Nancy Parker had done a very famous routine that was about the Wizard of Oz. And Robin Williams stole the entire piece and did it on Dangerfield's comedy special and put Nancy Parker pretty much out of business. And she ended up working in real estate. There's a lot of great female comedians. And I'm learning now that my story isn't, isolated. So like for me, a comedian that I didn't sleep with had who his best friend was representing me at the time. And it took me years to find out. It was somebody working at the office had quit, said, meet me in the park in 20 minutes, Central Park. I got to tell you something. He said, no, he's been blackballing you for years. People call for you. And he said, she's crazy and don't hire her. So then you get this label that you're crazy, and it's just because you speak your mind. And then my uncle, who was he won Tony Awards for choreography and Broadway, and he actually said that's how they control you in this business. They make you think you're crazy. They're guys who have had a career of drugs and beating people up and attacking women or underage women, and they have a career. And it's known, and they might even have a scandal that lasts 6 months. Oh, this comedian slept with all these underage girls, and then next thing you know, they're like, well, he's married now. He has a baby. Oh, he's married now. He's changed. Oh, leave him alone. And you're like, are you kidding me? I did nothing but just say something that was honest, and it's cost me decades. Yeah, there's a lot of, as many demons are on the business, I would say, and jealous people. I've been really, really lucky because I was dragged back into comedy by people that are just angels and brilliant people I look up to so much as just a fan. I'm a fan of. Recently it's been, I came back into comedy kicking and screaming because I didn't want to go back because of Robert Townsend. And I was always a fan of him as a comedian and his old HBO shows, and then directing Eddie Murphy Raw and all this stuff. When I ran into him and we talked, and I told him I was such a fan and that I was a comedian, and I had stopped. I was doing a job at this event. I was filming something, and he looked up my stuff and then cursed me out for like 35 minutes to tell me to get back on stage, but to reconstruct myself. I had a lot of support between Townsend and Sinbad, but even, after my film, because my film had done the festivals, then my film got shut down. But you don't erase, first of all, I'm sitting on, hundreds of hours of footage from the film, hundreds of hours of some of the greatest comedians that ever lived that I got to interview. And many of them are passed on. But the advice from like a Phyllis Diller or the advice from Carlin, and people putting clamps on you. And I'll never forget, I think the one thing that sticks with me maybe the most is my film got shut down. I tried to recut the film. George Carlin had tried to get the film on networks. He came to the festivals, and it was funny because we went to the Bellagio in Vegas, and we're struggling artists. The buffet is so expensive at this one hotel, but it's so good. So we all saved up money. We loaded up our dishes. We were ready to eat, and the phone rings, and it's George Carlin. And the reception was going out. So all of us left our dishes, the whole crew of us, and ran downstairs to try to hear Carlin because he watched the film. And he said he enjoyed it so much. He thought it was an important film. He said it was the greatest film ever done on comedy, and that he said it was an important film because it reveals many celebrities as assholes. and then he said he would walk the red carpet for us at the Vegas Festival. And then he really tried to have my back on all those things. And we invite us to our specials. And the last time I'd seen the film was shut down. I didn't have his number, so I went to, I think it was a Barnes and Noble in Tribeca.
Okay.
And and I wait in line, and I have like the DVD of the last cut I did of the film. And I said, hey, I couldn't get in touch with you. I don't know if you remember me, and he had given me actually 2 of his specials and said, you can use any of the footage that I want from those specials. That's how nice he was after we saw the film. You can cut anything you want out of these specials. I own them. Which I still have in my closet. I'm holding on to this. But anyway, I give him the copy. I said, I tried to redo the film and they stopped it, and I'm trying to get it back out and this and that, but I just want to say thank you. And then I walked away. He had an army of people at the book signing. So I walk, and I'm 2 blocks down. He left the bookstore, followed me for 2 blocks. And he said, I just want to tell you, you can't let them get away with what they did. You got to stand up and you got to stick it to them. Don't back down. You just you gotta stick it to them. And no matter what happens in my comedy or my filmmaking career, you have a legend like that. And that's that, you hold on to that advice. You have to keep fighting. Sometimes I would write when I'm building to come back. We used to hang out at the Boston Comedy Club, me, Greer Barnes, Tony Woods, Dave Chappelle. Like, Wanda was coming in and out, but there was like a pretty strong 3 or 4 of us, and other guys that just were part of the clique of hanging out. But you hang out enough, you start to kind of sound like each other a little bit. So there came a point where I would even write something, and I'd have to say, okay, but this sounds more like a little bit more like Tony, or a little bit more like how would I make it Maya? Like, how do I Mayanize it? Make sure sometimes you listen to, that's why I don't like to listen to comedy too much, because I don't want to pick up other people's cadences. So if you step back and you just say, well, is this authentically me? It gives you a little bit of time. And then there's times when you're on the mic and you just feel a flow and you can just go. But at the same time, it's best to take it back to the lab, dissect it, and be able to really say, do I really believe that? Or, it depends on what city you're in. Okay, so in New York is the only city that I've worked in. New York is the only city I've worked in where people help you. So if I had a joke or I was doing something, somebody go, you should write that down. You should write that down. You should write that down. So it's usually like, who says it? You should write that down, or am I getting an idea off of your joke? So then in New York, 90% of the time, you had a couple joke thieves, but 90% of the time, it would be, oh God, listening to you. You know what you should add? You know what came to me when you said such and such? Oh my God, this thought came to me. You should add that. You know what I mean? Or think about that, or here's another line for that. You give the person the line of who did the creation. In Los Angeles, they'll go, oh, that's so good. I'm going to make that my own joke. I could add this, or I'm just going to repeat it, or I'm going to steal it. There's so much theft in Los Angeles. It's so despicable. It makes you not where's the passion of working here? Because there's just so many people lifting your stuff. They listen and they lift. And then you say something and you say, listen, they stole my bit. And then people, it's so cliquish. There's no loyalty in this. I don't find much in the friendships here in Los Angeles. I started to want to make a film, and I met this guy who had a digital camera, and then I ended up getting the same camera. And I started I went to film school, let's just do coverage. So I just did a lot of walking in and out, and just walking in and out of the clubs, getting exteriors, interiors, which I'm glad I did, because when I got banned from the cellar, I had all my interiors, exteriors, and things I needed. And then I just started bringing the camera in and goofing around with friends. And I really wanted to film, really wanted to film Greer Barnes and Tony Woods, because I felt like those were 2 overlooked comedians. And I always felt the best comedians that I had been able to watch weren't easy to control. So management agency and business people kind of rejected them. Even Rich Voss, I felt like Rich Voss is one of my favorite, not only comedians, but human beings on the circuit. He's just got a soul like nobody ever. Everybody loves, Patrice has passed on. Everyone loves Patrice. And, but Norton and all these, most of those guys were fueled by Voss. He would give us all snaps. He even writes for all the roasts and stuff. So he was just such a giving comedian. But when I went to film Rich Voss, I loved filming him because I felt like he always clammed up when he'd go to a taping, but I felt like my cameras really got what it's like being in the room with Voss, and that's what I wanted. But because of I think being a female, which I didn't realize it at the time, but my crew kept stealing tapes and people kept shutting me down and throwing me out of the rooms, and so it got so bad that I ended up meeting this bruiser who was trying to be a comedian, some boxer, and he was Mike Tyson's sparring partner, and he was making a film with Danny Aiello Jr. and Richard Belzer. He was very close with Richard Belzer, and he started to get me my press passes for Montreal, and Jeff Ross tried to have me thrown out of Montreal, and Kenny had gotten Belzer to get me all the celebrities who were in Montreal to be interviewed after Jeff tried to have me thrown out. I got thrown out of the cellar because Seinfeld, after 6 months of me shooting, Seinfeld says he's going to shoot a documentary, and him and Colin Quinn started a comedian. And I'm there filming my friends, and the club throws me out, and I'm panicked. I'm going to get banned from the club. I got the camera out of there, so Kenny says, look, I already straightened out. I knew Colin Quinn for 20 years. I'll go down and talk to Colin and make sure you don't get in trouble. And he gets there, and I wasn't there, but Seinfeld had gone over to Colin, and then it turned it into this big eruption of an argument. And then tables are flipped over, and then next thing you know, the police shut down McDougal Street, and then I'm getting death threats, and made the cover of the New York Post and Daily News and National News of trying to beat up Jerry Seinfeld. And then when Seinfeld's film came out, he got his reviews, and we did ours in festivals, but they reviewed us against Jerry's, and they thought ours had more substance because it was about, an underdog. So we got a great review after that. And people offered us a lot of money for the film, but the film got shut down after the Tribeca Film Festival. But what was nice, it was a year later, Colin Quinn and Seinfeld had gone on the Howard Stern show and said that they gave me kudos on the film because they actually really loved, they really liked the film. But, I was like 20 years old. They could have been like, oh, little girl's trying to make her film. Don't worry about it. You shoot when you want. How about this? We'll even give you a little one. You can be in the background of my film. But one of the beautiful things is much chaos that happened in the film. The celebrities were wonderful, like Phyllis Diller and, Whoopi and, even Kevin James, like they were just so kind. I mean, Norman Lear. I mean, these are people I could not be, I couldn't have had more, I'd say they're just beautiful moments with people. And it was weird because I had a hard time with the waitress from the Comedy Cellar, didn't want to give me a release, but George Carlin didn't even read it. So it was like, wow, what the heck? There was this one comic, and he called me the C word every time I saw him. And I was like, all right, enough. Cause I've already been through all the lawsuits and all the drama. I really don't have the stomach for it. So I called the owner of the club, and he was just like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'll fire him. But then the booker leaves. And then 3 weeks later, I said, don't fire him. Just tell him to grow up. I'm professional. Don't, just grow up. 3 weeks later, the booker leaves, and they put this guy in to be the booker. So now, every time I am in town, he doesn't book me, and every time he offers me spots is when I'm gone. So I had to call the club back again. It's like, and then it wasn't just me. I thought he was treating me that way. Turns out all the young women who even work at the club, he was, like, who does that? Like, that's like creepy, rapey. Then he goes on stage and starts talking about, oh, I'm going to have sex with you before your show. This one, I just was finished doing this and that with her. And he did that to Caroline Ray. When I saw, and then it threw her off because I thought it was me when I first came in. He did that to me. And the thing is that in New York, I know myself. I would destroy this guy for doing it. But LA is so different. I can get in trouble for standing up. So I just had to balance the room and do, because I'm trying to get into the club and do my stuff. And Caroline Ray, I saw her do the same thing. She's like, oh, maybe I'm just old. And I'm like, you're not old. He just derails you. You came in here, as many dues as you've paid and performed all over the world. This guy came up here and diminished you. And then the audience is appalled. And it's like this really awkward moment that anything you say, that audience isn't going to pay attention because it derailed the whole front, 8 minutes of your set. Oh, it's crucial. Reading the room is probably more important than anything. I was talking to a young female comic who was just starting, and she'd come on and say all this raunchy stuff about herself and her family. And it was like, I said, if you were meeting someone for the first time, would that be your opening conversation? No, you'd sound like a psychotic. Everyone would be like, who is this mental that just came on and blurted this stuff? There is a point where you're greeting people for the first time. And yes. People are paying. It's so expensive to go to a nightclub, especially in a major city. People are spending $100 a person. They came in to be entertained. There is a point where even if, there's one of the greatest comedians that is working today is Tony Woods. Dave learned comedy from Tony Woods. Tony would go on stage, and sometimes he says, you still got to go in and meet that audience eye to eye. Or Tony would know the audience was up here from the last comedian. Tony could deliberately drop the audience, make them uncomfortable, making them feel like he's terrible, and then spike them all the way back up. He has that kind of control. And Tony's a genius for that. So even if you're planning on breaking the room, you still got to read the room. It is about us, but there's you say art is about yourself, but there is a level of there should be some kind of matched spirit, and that's why it's good. It's my soul can feel your soul. You don't have to change who you are, but if you can find that human point, that's why Pryor was the greatest of all time, because Pryor could find, you didn't have to agree with him, but he could make you connect to his fears as just a man. His fears is just almost a little kid in a grown-up person's body trying to deal with this life situation that you would maybe never had dealt with, but you got it. Even when he would talk about, when he was getting high, and you could feel that argument of being torn between the drug talking to you and the this and that. And everybody has that passion. Oh, it's the cookies talking to me. I wanted to eat, you can feel it. That is what makes you great. It's not because I can say the most toxic stuff on the mic to freak everybody out and I'm being an artist because I'm saying the most toxic thing. It's an opening up of your soul. That's why Chappelle works really strong, because even if he's not telling a joke, he's there in the real conversation, and he is searching for his explanation to why he feels the way he feels about something. And you'll see that when he's digging, when he's working, not necessarily when he's taping, or locking out the set, but he's digging. And it's almost like Pryor would talk about the woodshedding, he'd woodshed the bit. He'd find something, he'd start working and working and working. But that reality of trying to find and be in that moment, the audience eventually goes, what's going on over there? And they're there. And it's pretty magical, because I feel like the last 6 months, because I've worked so much and because I'm in enough shape that I'm in, I always like to do high energy stuff. But recently, it's been really nice to just connect, not know what I'm saying to them, just be in that moment of talking, and it's been kind of amazing, and they stay with you, and you're really being real. Yeah, at the Apollo, my first TV taping, and I was a really young comic, and they tried to boo me, and I know they air whoever they boo, so I yelled, "Shut the hell up," and the room stopped. And the Apollo's like, that audience is really close. It's like 4 balconies, but like right on you. And I remember thinking like, oh, I better get really funny, really fast. This is gonna be so bad. Like quick, get to the next bits. And yeah, so that you have to reel it back. I wasn't as seasoned to know, but sometimes you just know, like that came out of nowhere. And when I said that, and then I quickly got back on it. But even now, you snap on somebody and you can turn that audience against you. And then usually whoever's face you see turn, you usually have to maybe go to that person, get them too. And then you can get them to go against that person. And then, but it's hard when you have a real moment because when you have real moments, the hecklers bring out real moments. And it's hard to go back to material because that audience is so in this high from feeling the live interaction that happens, that it's sometimes hard to be like, okay, now I'm going back to this joke. So you have to be really subtle how you come back in, because they get like I said, it's like comedy is like it's a little bit of a drug for the audience too. Comedy just get like, and you're like, oh, now she's doing material again.
New ones.
No, I think the reason why you're seeing that is because a lot of people are not trying to be internet stars. So they're trying to get crowd work on a tape so that way they can Matt Rife it. And in that way, if you want, you can't do instant fame with comedy. It's really, I mean, you can get a couple of lucky shots, and I had a lot of heat when I was very, very young in comedy. I had a lot of great things happen to me very, very early, but you're not really even prepared. Yeah. You're not really prepared for how to read a room, how to switch, how to really know, like, okay, this is not going, go this direction, move that direction, this energy changed here, someone put the glass there, something, there's a lot happening to keep that audience in focus. And especially if you're coming on and you're warming up. So like prior, because when you watch that special, he was warmed up. And that crowd, whether they started or not, they said they were filming and who knows what the hour was that they had to do it. And you just go in. But, live on Sunset Strip, they said he did 2 tapings. The first one, he bombed the first night. Eddie Murphy Raw bombed the first night as well. 2 tapings. Because you befriend people, you don't realize they're toxic people that are hanging out in a nightclub. They're people that you want to be there for the art, and they're there for their ego. They hang out with this and that. So you're better going and leaving. When I did a lot of, when I went to the black comedy rooms, they will allow you to be a new jack. They always have a new jack section. The show was good. I actually got more out of those than I did out of just standard open mics. It was a real audience. Okay. They booed me. They were, these were rooms that allowed me to have a slot. So those are the ones that, and it might only be 3 minutes, but a 3-minute spot on a real show, you're still getting in front of an audience, not in front of a room audience. Because other comedians, their jokes that I destroy, I won't do. And like Townsend, who's, legendary, here's the joke. And he's like, that joke is probably one of the most brilliant jokes you ever wrote. So that was one of my first jokes, but I cut it because I was running it in front of other comedians that told me that wasn't going to work. Even though audiences loved it, they actually convinced me to give up my best material. It's just a trend. It never dies out because the audience loves it. It's a trend that's happening in a way that's kind of, I almost feel like it's like a little bit of a bullying. I was talking to this great physical comedian, Don Reed, and Don is insane. And he was telling me a story because I said I always wanted to be like a Don Reed. And then when I became a comedian, I wanted to be the kind of comic that stands behind the mic and does nothing. Like I was kind of told that that's how I have to be. And I actually feel really inhibited with a microphone because I feel like I'm trying to be this comedian standing behind a mic. So I like to go without the mic a lot. And Don said that he had the same insecurity, but he was opening for Sammy Davis Jr. And he said that Sammy said, he said, I told Sammy my problem. He said, the reason why people try to make you feel like you shouldn't be doing it is because they can't do it. So fuck them. It's not a talent-driven business. And this is the hard fact I've had to come to. This business isn't about the talent. This business is driven by social media numbers, agents trying to get their numbers in so they don't get fired. They don't want to take chances on they don't care about who's great. They care about who can pull in ticket sales. The clubs don't want to pay for promotion anymore. It's about your agent and the agent protecting their artist. So this artist might be funnier. So they don't want to help that artist. They'll bury the artist that's funnier so they can advance this person. It's not about the talent. And in that way, a lot of the people who are less talented have had more opportunity. And the people who are talented, because they rely so heavily on their talent and that they don't feel that they should have to bend to do things that they don't agree with, because talent is God-given. It's like it's granted to you from the universe. And when you have that, truly, you have a confidence that even if you have to walk away from a toxic situation, you will. Mm-hmm. But if you're in it just for money, and you're in it just to advance, and you don't really truly feel, I think in a lot of ways it's been dropped to a level. Like people all love Pryor, but now it's dropped to this level where you're not allowed to do that because people won't let you buy. And so now there's almost a shame that's come with it. Oh, look at them, they're being a hack because they're giving the audience a show. Well, the audience just paid $100 each person minimum for the night in a basic comedy club. Why can't I give them a show? No, you're supposed to just stand on stage and monologue and tell them how they're supposed to feel and say crazy. It's the showmanship has been driven out of the business. That's what I feel. I feel that the bar is, they talk about grading on a curve. Well, you fuck up the curve if you are truly talented. And I think to do physical comedy, you have to really, truly be talented. Yeah. And it's like, because I'm working the room. Yeah. If I'm working a room full of 700 people, I better be presenting a show. When I'm working, but I'm filming those rooms. If I'm in a room where I'm, like right now, if I'm taping, I have to be conscious that I'm taping something because you tone it down. Aside from that, you kill the intro. I'd be better off doing 30-second bits and know I'm doing 30-second bits, and I'm doing it for the camera. When I did the Apollo, I got a standing ovation at the Apollo, but on the camera, I looked like I was being loud, but I was controlling a room that was trying to boo me off.
Exactly.
So it's if you're playing just for camera or you're playing for the room. But Robin Williams was big. Pryor was big. I say trust yourself. Trust yourself, but be who you are. And it's hard to find who you are. But you can find who you are on stage because when you talk to people, but be authentic. I think that's it. Being authentic you might not know who you are, that you can actually say, well, this is who I am. Or, you're always trying on different hats through life. We play a lot of different roles in life. But if you are authentic with those people, and honest, then you should be okay, But that's what makes the moments really worthwhile for the artist, because when you do have that connection, it feels so good. It's really what you're looking for as an artist as well, that genuine connection between people. And it keeps you going no matter how bad, because the business is bad. The stage isn't bad. It's the business that's been rough. But it doesn't, and it has its ups and its downs, and it's all over the place, and it's unpredictable. But that loving of being in your art and connecting on that stage, that'll get you through it. So stay there and don't leave it, because that's what the harder part was for me, leaving that. I couldn't sleep. And then when I got back to it, I was like, oh, okay, that's what I'm missing. It's that connection.